Welcome to an RPG in a Box Basics video tutorial. In this video, we're going to take a look at the map editor. In the previous video, we talked about the map editor camera controls and how to move around the map editor. But now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at these options that you have on the left-hand side, what they do, how to use them. And then we'll also just take a quick look at using the map editor so you can get familiar with how it works. So let's start with the first option, the movement system. So RPG in a Box uses two movement systems. It uses grid movement, which means the movement of the characters and the player is tied to these lines and this grid. Or you can use free movement, which means that the player gets disconnected from these lines and this grid and they can move freely about at wherever they want to go. And it uses the collision of the tiles and models instead of these lines to dictate the clear paths and the routes that the player can take. So the movement system allows you to either use the global default, which is where you would set up in your game configuration section under gameplay mechanics, I think, the movement system. This is where you would set a global movement system. So if you wanted your entire game to be a grid movement game, you would set it here. And as long as your maps are all set to global default, it will use that setting, and therefore all of your maps will be grid movement. If you changed this to free movement and you had these maps as global default, now they'll all be free movement, okay? But you can also change per map. You can specify that this map should be grid while the rest of them are free movement, or you could say this map should be free movement while this one should be grid movement. So this just basically allows you to define the movement system that your map uses, either per map or tying it to the global default. Okay. Next, we have the preload and postload scripts. This allows you to assign scripts that you write in the Visual Script Editor and assign them to these two events. Preload basically means that this script is going to run before the map is loaded. So before all of the entities are placed on the map, before the tiles that you see here are loaded, basically this script happens before the map is essentially fully loaded. Whereas postload is the opposite. This script will run when the map is finished loading and all of the assets have been set up on the map and all the tiles have been set up and everything like that. So things to be aware of with the preload script is if this script that you're going to assign to this event references any entities that should be on the map, like for example, let's say we placed a goblin on the map, okay, and we had a script that was going to set something on the goblin or make the goblin do something or whatever, and you put that in the preload script event, it's not going to work because it's not going to be able to find the goblin because this is preload. So the map hasn't loaded yet, so therefore nothing exists, including the goblin. So don't put any scripts into preload that reference anything on the map. Those are for the postload. So when the map is fully loaded and everything's set up, that's when you would have a postload script. Preload script would typically be things that are more global. So things like setting up variables, setting up, typically those kind of things. Anything that's sort of entity-based, like things within the map, they're not going to work in a preload script because by definition, it's before it's all loaded in. So those are what those do. I hope that's cleared that up. So again, you would write scripts in the script editor and you would assign them to these two events. Then we have background type. So first of all, by default is color, and that's basically the background color that you see of the sky, essentially. So if you wanted a blue sky, you would click this button here, change the color to blue. Let's make it a brighter blue. And then now you've got a completely changed background color. But that's all it is. It's just a background color. So the whole thing gets changed to match the color that you select here. Okay. But you can also change the background type. So we've got other options. We can have a procedural sky. So if we click that, it gives you the procedural sky settings. So you can change the top color, which is this bit here. So if we said, let's say that's more pinky purple, and then you can change the horizon color, which is this color here, so we can make that like a blue or something, just make something really weird. And then you've got the horizon color down here as well, so let's just do again more of a bluey purple, And then the bottom color, let's make that like almost like a red. And then you can change the sun color as well. So whatever color you pick, let's have a green sun. And then you can change the latitude, which is the height. So let's say we want the sky and sun to be a bit lower. So you type 20, that will bring the sun down. And then longitude is left to right. So let's say 20, and then that moves it over to the right. Minus 20 moves it over to the other side. Okay, and then you can click and drag within the preview to rotate it round. And then this will reset the camera, and this will invert the mouse. So when we go to the left, it's actually scrolling to the right. Don't know why you'd want to do that, but you can. And then notice how the direction when you rotate the camera shows you which direction the camera is facing, south, east, north. So we can see that the sun is currently facing in the north direction. So if we click OK and we apply that, so now we can see our settings. If we face the camera north, we should look up and see the sun. Okay? Whereas if we rotate it east, we're not going to see the sun. So if you want the sun facing in a particular direction when you're in the map editor, make sure in the procedural sky settings that you face, for example, west, and then you apply minus 40 or something, keep going, minus 60, until you get the sun where you want it. So in this case now it is in the west. Let's do, I don't know, 120 or something. So it gets it roughly in the center. Click OK. And now when we face west, there it is. It's now in that direction. Okay, so you can use the camera direction name here to align it with the direction in the map editor when you're looking around as well. Okay, so that's procedural sky and how to use it. You would just change the sky color and the horizon color and the sun color and the height and the longitude of the sun as well. But you can also choose panorama sky, and this will allow you to, if you have any images, they need to be sizable images, but you can set an image as this is going to be a bit silly, it's a stretched image of my shovel tool, so that's a bit of a silly example. But if you had a panoramic image of a skybox, then you can set that here. It needs to be a PNG. You place that in your images folder, and then it will be available for you to select as a panorama sky. Okay, so that's the background type. Then we have background music. If you have any .ogg files, .ogg files in your musics folder of your project, you can then assign them to background music of your map, and then those will play when the map is playing. Loading image override. This allows you to set an image per map for the loading screen for that map. Otherwise, you would use the general, somewhere here, I think it's in the user interface, the loading image. You can set that as the global loading image, but this one will override it per map. Okay, a bit like the movement system where you've got a global default, which you can keep every map using, but you can also override it on a per map basis. So this will allow you to have a specific loading image for this map if you wanted one. Camera override allows you to change the camera again on a per map basis. So you can either have the standard third person camera, or you can switch it to an isometric camera for this map, or you can switch it to a first person camera for this map. So that way you can mix and match maps in your game where one map is first person and then the other is third person. That will allow you to do that. Player override allows you to change the player model per map. So you could have one map where you're Justin, and then the next map you're a goblin. You can change that there if you wish to. And then this setting here allows you to set whether it's a visual override only. So if that's ticked, then you'll only look like a goblin. But if it's not ticked, then you will actually become the goblin and inherit the health, the attack damage, all of that of the goblin. So you will actually completely change character, not just the look. Okay? Then we have camera orientation. This allows you to change where the camera is rotated in relation to the player when they load the map. So is the camera behind the player? Is the camera facing the player, or is it facing north, south, east, or west? Or is there just no change per map? Okay, so that should be pretty self-explanatory. Let's come back to the actual map for a moment. So next we have the camera boundaries option. Now, it's important to note at the moment that there are some issues with the camera boundaries, so it's best to sort of skip over this for now. But what it will do when it sort of properly works is it allow you to limit the camera to an area of your map. So when you're playing the game and the camera is following the player, you can set up a boundary so that the camera will not follow the player if they step out of a particular area. So that's useful for making it so that the camera in game can't go outside of the playable area. It's always tied to areas of your game where there's actual map. Okay, but there's a bit of an issue with it at the moment where when you enable it, you can't turn it off again. So if you are going to use it, back up your map first, just in case you don't want to turn it off again. In order to turn it off again, you need to restore a backup of your map. So that will need to be fixed so that you can disable it. So because of that issue, I'm not going to cover it in this video. I will cover it in a separate video as and when it's suitable to do so. So look out for that video if you do want to know how to use camera boundaries. But we'll move on for now. It's important to note they do work, but you just can't turn them off. So once you've restricted the camera, there's no way to actually then unrestrict it. Although there is, but it's a bit of a workaround. So until it's properly working, I don't think it's a good idea to really sort of highlight using it. It's better to say, for now, we'll come back to it. Groups allows you to define a set of tiles in your map and add them to a group. This can be for many reasons. It can be for setting up spawn points. So refer to my combat video to learn more about how to do that. It could be for just setting a set of tiles in your map for when you're in game, to use it for scripting. So you might want to check that the player is within a certain set of tiles. So what you'll do is you'll select your tiles that you want in a group, and then you'll either click the, I don't know if you can actually, you can right click and do grouping, add to group, or you can press the shortcut key, which is the G key, and then you can name the group. So tiles, and now these are in a tiles group. And then you can, as I say, you can use that group in scripting to either check if the player is within the group or add something to that group, all of that sort of thing. Okay. Groups are also used for some of the building mechanics, which if you want to refer to my auto hide groups video, that's where groups come into effect as well. They can also be, as I say, used for random encounters and enemy spawning and that sort of thing. Refer to the combat video for that specific purpose. And then to use groups, you can drop down the list, and this will be all the groups you have in your map. Select the one you want to edit. This button will allow you to reselect those tiles or things that are in that group so you can see what the group has inside it. This will allow you to hide that group so we can actually turn that group's visibility off. We can then bring back the group, but we can also delete the group. Now it's important to note, when we delete the group, it doesn't delete what's in the group, it just deletes the group. So if we click this and say yes, although it's removed tiles from the list, the tiles themselves are still there, okay? And then these are the options for a particular group if you want to set it up as a combat related group. Next we have zones. These are for free movement games, so Grid currently now can't, as of right now, can't make use of zones. But what you do is you click add, and then you give your zone a name. Let's just call it zone 1, and you can set whether it's passable or not. And when you click OK, it will create a transparent either green or red box. The color, green or red, will be dependent on the passable setting. So when you add a zone, if this is not ticked, and we said zone 2, and we just change the position of it, let's just say free, you can see we've got a red zone and a green zone. This one's passable, this one's not. Now there's also a difference between the tiles, between the zones, not just based on whether they're collidable or not, but but also how they function when they're collidable or not. Passable ones, if we look in the settings for the zone 1, which is the passable one, the trigger event is when the character enters or exits, because they can enter or exit, okay? Whereas if we look at the settings for zone 2, which is the impassable one, it's not enters or exits, it's collides. So passable will mean you can't enter it, so it'll be like an invisible wall, okay? So if you're walking from this direction, you'll suddenly be unable to go any further, and then this event will trigger. You've collided with it. So you can have things happen, like a script will run when you collide with it. Whereas this one, you can go inside. So then this script event is for when you either enter, but you can also have a separate script for when you exit as well. And then you can resize the zone with these values here. So 16 by 16 by 16 is a cube on the map editor, because these are all 16 by 16 tiles. So this is the size of a tile at the moment. So if we said 32 and pressed enter, we've stretched it double in that direction, but we could also stretch it double in the other direction as well. So now you've got a 32 by 32 zone. It's still 16 high, but we can make that now 32 high as well. And then the position is where this zone is then placed on the map editor. So let's say we wanted to trigger something when you walk between these two walls. So what we need to do is get the coordinate here. So that's -2, -2, 0. So we go back to our zone and start with that, -2, -2, 0. And you can see now that the left edge of this zone is butting up against the wall. Sorry, I'm typing into the number box. Let me just click save so I can move again. So you can see that it's a bit too far to the wall. Not that it really matters in this case. You could leave it like that, or you could nudge it a little bit more. That's the wrong direction. So we could say 2.5. The nice thing about zones is they're not tied to the grid, so they can actually move in smaller increments. So we could say 1.5. So we can get that nicely butting up against the wall. And then I think because that's a two tile sized zone, that should have already filled the gap, which it has. So that's great. So now when the player walks within this zone, which is now in between these two walls, it's going to essentially trigger something, okay? Whatever it is you want to have happen when they either enter or exit, you can assign a script to that event, okay? For the obstruction one, for the collides one, this can be used in free movement for many different things, but one might be, for example, making it so you can't walk off the edge of the map. So this can be like an invisible boundary. So again, you would size this to be the length of your side of your map, and then you'd position it along the edge, and along here you'd have another one along here. So this is how you basically use zones, okay? And then you can delete the zones by clicking the remove button, and that will delete that zone. You can also rename them if you don't like the name. This should be barrier, and now it's called barrier, or you can delete it like so. Okay, so that's zones, and that's how they work. Then we have camera positions. Camera positions are created by moving the camera in the map editor to where you want the camera position to be, and then you click this button here, save camera position. If I click that, I can give it a name. So let's just call it camera 1. I can then move the camera, let's say looking top down, and then I can save it again as camera 2. And now in the map editor, we have these camera positions. So I've got camera 1, I can jump to that camera. Camera 2, I can jump to that camera. So I can look at these different cameras positions. This is used for either things like custom main menus, where you can have this view. If, for example, if we go to the UI editor, it doesn't even have to be a custom main menu. We can go to the main menu and we can set a background map. So let's say the overworld, and then it gives you a camera position. So we could have, you'd have to save it. I haven't saved the map first. Save your map, and then in the UI editor, you can set these camera options now. So now that's the background for my map. Or if I wanted the top-down one, that's now the background for my map. Okay? And you can also turn this on which is allows NPCs to be moving around while you're at the main menu. Otherwise, they'll just stand in place. Okay. Anyway, we're jumping a bit off topic because we've gone into a completely different section of the program, but I just wanted to show you that in this section of the program, that's where you would make use of those camera positions if you wanted the map as the background to your main menu, for example. But if we save that for now and go back to the map editor, so that's camera positions. Other things you can do with camera positions is you can move the camera during the game. So you might have the camera, go from here to here in a cutscene. So you want to go from camera 1 to camera 2. So you would use specific scripting commands that refer to these camera positions. So you would set them up in the map editor here, and then you would use the names that you've given them in certain scripting commands. So we'll cover those in a cutscene video at some point. Then we have fog. So you turn that on. Let's just delete these cameras now. So fog allows you to turn a fog on, and then you can edit the settings. So height fog is, as it says, if we change the color first of all, so let's give it like a mysterious green glowing fog. And then height, if you turn that off, then the fog is more for the distance if you turn this on. So the further away you are, forward and back is where things will, it's a bit like, what do you call it? Fog of war in some games where, in first-person games, for example, the PlayStation used to do this a lot where it was black. And the further away you were, things went black. And then as you move forward, you can see that they come out of the fog. So depth fog is basically forward and backwards fog, okay? Whereas if we go back to the settings, we turn that off, then you can see as far as you want into the distance. But then height fog is distance off the floor. So this is good for, as I say, spooky fog. So you can say, let's lower the ceiling a bit. So now it's sort of sitting on the floor a bit more, but then you could raise the floor up a little bit. So basically this is the fog in relation to the floor up and down rather than forward and back. Okay. And if we go into the settings of the fog one more time, you can obviously, as I say, change the color as you want. Okay. So that's fog, pretty straightforward. Day-night cycle allows you to obviously have a day-night cycle. By default, it's always on. And day-night cycle uses the global time, which is found in the gameplay section of game configuration, and it's in, if I can remember where, day-night, obviously. So this is the time between day and night. So a 24-hour period currently takes 600 seconds. So you can adjust that, and then you can also assign, if you've created some, a day preset and a night preset for the lighting. Okay, that's done further down. We'll get to that in a moment. So this is where you would set the lighting presets. And then you've got an event scheduler. This allows you to add an event, and then you'd set the time. So that's a specific time on this timeline. So between 0 and 600. So 300, for example, would be midday. So if you wanted something to happen at midday, you would change this to 300. So then when that clock between 0 and 600 reaches 300, then you can run a script. And that script could be anything. It could be, making NPCs go into buildings at nighttime, that sort of thing, or having the lights turn on, that sort of thing. So you can script things to happen at particular times of the day using the event scheduler. You'd set the time in the global cycle duration that you want something to happen, and then what script should be run at that time. Okay. And then these are the light settings. So we've got ambient and directional. So you can change the color. So if we said a red, that changes the overall color to red, and obviously you can change the intensity. And then the directional color, let's make that red as well. Again, let's change the intensity. You can change the brightness and things. Let's change the angle of the light. So it all has different effects. You can turn the shadows off, or if you turn them on, you can make the shadows darker. Scroll down a bit, put general illumination on, things like that. And then what you'll do is you'll save this Where is it? Yes, here. Go up to lighting presets again under the day-night cycle option, and you can save this as a global preset. So let's call this red sky. And then when you're in your day-night settings, you can say that when it's day, when it's, the day portion of this clock, it should look like red sky. And then when it's night, it should look like something else you make, right? So you set the parameters here for the lighting you want, and then you save it as a preset, and then you can change them again and save them as another preset, and it will remember the settings that you had. So for example, if we set it to, if we change the settings, so let's say the sky should now be green on both settings, but then we say switch back to red and preview red, it will go back to being the red sky. So you can change the settings and then save them, change them again and save them again as different things, and that will allow you to set up different lighting presets. Glow is used for when you have things in your model, whether it be character model or tiles or whatever, that use the emissive option. So if we go to the goblin, for example, and edit it in the voxel editor, there's a emissive colors option here, which we could say, if we select his eyes, we could add those as an emissive color, which means in game, when you preview, they will glow. Now in this case, they're a bit too bright, but we can change the brightness a bit to make them less white. So let's change the color of them a bit. Let's click that and make it a bit darker. And paint them in. Set that as the emissive color, save it. So now when we preview, they're more yellow. So now we've got our emissive color set up. Then in the map editor, this allows you, this option here, the glow, allows you to set how much they glow. So you can set the different glow layers. So if you had all of these off, that would be a very faint glow. If you had that on, that would be the maximum glow. But you can also mix and match them. So having these combined would give you even more glow. So mess with those to change the amount of glow your emissive entities emit that light. Okay, that's what glow does. And then the last one is your VHS CRT effects. So you can turn this on, and this will allow you to change all sorts of things like scan lines, the resolution if you want to pixelate it, if you want the artifact, the roll that's happening at the moment, you can turn that off or on, change the roll speed, the roll size, variation, that sort of thing, how much it distorts the image. We've also got noise, so you can make the image more grainy, like so. Chromatic aberration separates out the colors, almost like a 3D effect. You might even be able to make a 3D game with the old 3D glasses, possibly, if you just had chromatic aberration and turned all the distortion and noise off. So it looked like a clean image, but it was just... let's turn the noise all the way down. You might be able to make a 3D game like that, possibly, if you had the old glasses. Not saying it would work, but it's just, you never know. Could be worth trying it. This color, if you want to sort of desaturate some of the image. So you can just mess around with, the sort of, almost like whether it looks like it's an old VHS tape or something like that. Or you can just turn it off. So depending on how you want your game to look, you can do things like that. If you wanted to make a security camera or something, then you can obviously set that to look like you're looking out of a camera or something. So those are all the options that you have available to you in the properties of a map. And these are the options that are available when you don't have anything selected. So if you see different options to the ones I've gone over in this video, it's probably because, for example, you've got something selected. And in this case, you're looking at entity properties, not map properties. What we've gone over today are all the map properties, okay, of the global map editor, okay? So other things to know about the map editor is obviously we have the tools here. So this option allows you to place tiles and entities as well. This allows you to edit the things that are on your map, so select and edit tiles and entities. And this allows you to paint on or delete the navigation, the lines that if you're using a grid mode game, you'll use these for your navigation. And then we have fill. So if we select floor and then click on the grass, make sure you're on the right tool. It should replace all of the grass that you click on with that particular tile. I've never used it before, so it's good to know that's what it does. So now you know as well. And then this option here is for if you have sections of tile that are not connected. So for example, if we undo for a minute and we put some grass over here using the paint tool, and then we switch to the replace and we click dungeon floor and we click on this grass, it will only replace this grass because contiguous means that it only replaces things that are connected. So because this grass isn't connected to this grass, although we're replacing grass, you're only replacing it for the isolated area that you're clicking on. If, however, we undid and we connected this grass up to the other grass, like so, and then we switch to fill mode and filled dungeon floor, now it does everything because this bit here connects this area to this, and so this will only replace those that are connected. If we undid that and deleted these, so they're disconnected again, but then we filled but turned this off, then it will replace everything, even if they're not connected. Okay, so if you don't want to change everything, make sure that this is ticked. Okay, and that will also, if you have that on, it will also randomly rotate the tiles as it fills them in, as it replaces them. Okay, going back to our place tool, we can either place things in a box mode. So as we click and hold, we can drag a box like so, and switch to grass again. It's easy to see, like so. Or we can switch it to single, and then as we click and drag, it's just placing tiles in a shape as we move our mouse around. Okay. Override existing will override anything that's already on there. So if we already had some dungeon tiles down, then whenever I place, let's say, a box of grass and drag over the red, it will replace them. Whereas if you turn that off and we click and drag a box, it leaves them in place. Okay. We have random rotation. So when we're clicking and dragging, each of these grass tiles is randomly rotated as it gets placed. We also have this option here, which is auto connect navigation. So as we drag and create a section of tiles, it's also automatically drawing the green lines that mean the player and NPCs can move around. If we turn that off and drew some tiles out, it does the tiles, but it doesn't do the navigation. So then you would click the navigation tool and add them in afterwards. Okay. Refer to my navigation video where I talk about why you might want to have that off and on depending on what you're doing. Okay. But for now, we'll just go over these options very simply. Okay. And then we have the edit tool. And again, you can either select things singularly, like so, or you can select a box and then click and drag and select multiple things. Okay. You can also use the shift key. So if I click this square, hold shift and click another square, it will select it. If I've accidentally selected something I didn't mean to, so I don't want this tile selected, but I want to keep these selected, you hold Alt and Shift and click on the one you don't want, and that will take it out of a selection. Okay. And then with the edit tool as well, when you click on a single thing, whether it's a tile, an entity or whatever, it will change this from being map properties to entity properties, and this will allow you to change the settings of this particular, in this case, tile. Okay. So we'll cover entity properties at another point. But for now, let's also talk about how you actually build on the map. So let's just delete some of this stuff. Let's use the box select to delete these tiles. So in order to place something, you'll use the place tool here. And then this is something important to know as well. This set of buttons on the side, they dictate the height at which you place things. So at the moment, the height is 0. So if I place these tiles, then they're at the same level as the tiles that are already on the map. But if I go up a couple of numbers, then when I place these tiles and we zoom in a bit, you can see, obviously it's a bit too dark, but you can actually see that these tiles are slightly raised because we put them at a different height to the other tiles. And we could exaggerate that by going up an entire couple of grids. And then when we place these and go back to edit mode, now you can see the difference in height. We turn off the grid so you can see a bit better. You can see a different height at which we are placing these sets of tiles. Okay, so if you want to place tiles at different heights to other tiles, that's what these buttons are for. Okay, so make sure you're making use of those. So you can go up and down the height, or go up in small increments, up in big steps. So 0 is always the default starting height for most maps. Okay, so with that said, I believe that pretty much covers everything. If you want to delete tiles, you can just select them with the select tool, press the delete key, and that will delete them. So if we want to delete all of these, we'll just select them and press the delete key, like so. And then we can also add other ones back in. So there is a quick overview of the map editor and how to use it. When it comes to drawing navigation lines, you can also, when you're in navigation mode, you can change the mode of navigation by clicking the different colored lines you want. So if we wanted a purple line here, and we wanted a yellow line here, or you can use the N key to cycle through them. Okay, and I will explain in the navigation video what the colors mean and why you might want certain lines over others. But just in the spirit of sharing how to use the map editor, just to explain that that's how you use the navigation tool. So I think I've covered as much as there is really to know about the map editor at this stage. You know how to use the camera, you know what all the map properties are, and you know how to place and delete tiles, as well as place and delete navigation. Deleting navigation, is right-click and hold, and it will delete that particular line. Or you could hover over a white dot and press delete, and it will delete all connecting navigation to that particular dot. Okay, so that's how you delete navigation as well. I did forget to mention that. But that will bring us to the end of this video. If you have any questions about the map editor, anything specific, do feel free to ask on the Discord. But this should at least get you set up with starting to build out your map. So with that said, that'll bring us to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next tutorial.